my name's Kerry Grace from Ready Communities, and today I'm calling in from Gumbaynggirr country in the mid-north coast of New South Wales.
And I am Dr. Chad Renando, coming to you from Yagara country up here in Ipswich. And we do pay respect for elders and acknowledge traditional custodians and elders past, present, and emerging.
So today we'd like to discuss the Ready Communities program and what it is and exactly why we invented it. So I might start with a bit of the why. So after working in community and economic development for about 25 years, most recently with the Regional Development Australia program in the mid-north coast of New South Wales and also Norfolk Island, I've come to, I guess, have a different view on economic and community development and how it can work to really build stronger regional communities. I noticed a lot in my work with Regional Development Australia that quite often community and economic development don't cross over, and sometimes that's exactly what communities need so they can grow and become stronger. So late last year, I implemented the very first Social Impact in the Regions conference. I designed that conference so we could bring community and economic development practitioners together, and they could really create a dialogue about how regional communities can change. The other thing is I'm very well aware that there is not, or there are not strong ecosystems in social impact in regional Australia, and that's something I'd really like to see changed. There are some amazing practitioners who may not even associate with words like social entrepreneur, social impact, or any of the language. So they're much less likely to engage with peaks and also the massive movement that's happening across Australia at the moment. So the conference, I believed, would give us a good platform to start that. And luckily, 165 people came in the first year, so I decided to do it again. And I always wanted it to be something that was based in a regional community so it could really create change in that community. So I met Chad in December, and together we've not only designed, but we're actually running the very first Ready Communities initiative. So maybe you could talk about that, Chad.
Well, you bet, Kerry. And we just want to take this opportunity to share with people because, people kind of seeing what we've been doing and saying, what's this all about? So taking this bit of an opportunity to share a little bit more. And as Kerry said, both of us have kind of had a bit of experience in regional development, economic development. My background's more so from the innovation, what we refer to as the innovation ecosystem area. Again, as Kerry said, I was really passionate about that place-based change, but how do we make an impact? As Kerry said, there's a lot of things that have been happening in the past. You look at it and think, well, how could we structure that a bit differently? And so that's where Ready Communities came about, which is a 2-year place-based program. And it has 3 main components to it. The first part is a 10-month lead-in. And what we do there is we go into community. We work with them with an initial engagement to understand what the opportunities, what the challenges are from what they say. We also start doing a bit of a mapping work, and where we map the assets in the community, we map the policies and the funding opportunities to really get an understanding on where the energy in the community is based on what they're saying and what we're observing. And out of that, we develop some focus areas, and we start exploring how those might be clustered together, see what groups are already formed, those are new groups need to be formed. And out of those 5 cluster areas, we then start working on what we call activations, with a series of 3 activations over those 10 months with ongoing activities in between. And those activations are designed to unpack and uncover and discover ideas. We then take those ideas, form them into initiatives, work with the community to say, well, what could be done? As we come back a few months later to say, let's try a few things. And then 2 or 3 months later, we come back and say, well, let's actually put a few things into practice. But all of this is focused on the second part of the Ready Communities program, which is the event, the Social Impact in the Regions event, which Kerry spearheaded previously. And we're rolling into this 2-year program. And at that 3-day event, it really acts to mobilize and catalyze effort towards that big event, but it also brings a national delegation of leaders focused on social impact. The topics of the event are very much around building capacity and capability in regional communities across Australia with global relevance, but also with and being informed by the local community that we're in and what we call the content within the context. So it's informed by the themes that have emerged in that community over that 3-day event, building capacity in leaders from across Australia, But then we also connect those leaders to the local place in which the conference is in. And what we do is we make an ask. You come there, you have a great experience, all the dopamine hits that we typically get from the big events. But then we say, look, would you come back at least once over the next 12 months? And we figure if we get 300 people to a region, a good percentage of those coming back to the region over the next 12 months, that's going to create 12 months of legacy activation. But then Kerry and I are moving to another community to support the similar kind of program there. And our vision is to connect 10 to 18 communities over the next 10 years or so to be able to connect leaders to engage. So that's the overall structure. But Kerry, what's actually happening in what we call Ready Macleay? Like what's happening there?
So Ready Macleay is our pilot. It's based primarily in the township of Kempsey in New South Wales. Kempsey is a community that has had lots of different programs, lots of different, I guess you could call them social impact, but primarily they manifest as not-for-profit programs. And a lot of great work's done there. But when we look at the word ready and what is readiness, it means two things for us. The first is being ready for the conference. So quite often communities like Kempsey will have things just plonked in them. So they just kind of happen and the community doesn't get to participate in it. And we're making sure that the community is very engaged in developing the conference, and I'll explain that in a minute. The other part about readiness is we also believe that our program can ready people for a place-based approach. So there are several place-based programs already operating in Kempsey, and part of our fundamental principles is that we don't go into a community unless there is a backbone organisation or backbone structure, and that place work has actually already started. So we can escalate their work. And a really good example of that is our ability to bring in different types of networks. And again, I come back to this community/economic development approach. So one of our key themes of 5 themes in Kempsey is CBD activation. And we've been able to really closely link that place-based organisation in Kempsey, it's called Learning the Macleay, with the CBD, with the shops. And really to demonstrate, not that they weren't connecting with the shops, but we're able to demonstrate a different purpose and different reasons why they would be doing that. So the 5 themes we have in Kempsey are CBD activation, youth futures, creative industries, housing, and agricultural communities. And it's really interesting to watch all of those different themes unfold. So we had the activations in February, and there were around about 20 or so people came to a meeting on each of them. They generated 70 initiatives that they'd like to work on as a community. And we make it really clear that we don't activate the initiatives unless we can be really catalytic in terms of doing it. So one such opportunity is the opportunity to set up a hub where people can meet. So we are doing some extra work on that. But opportunities like a farmer's market, for example, was one of the initiatives that was suggested. And we don't run farmers markets. That's not what we're there to do. But we did find some stakeholders that were really keen to do it. So we're getting behind and supporting them. So quite often we find people in communities have awesome ideas, but they just don't know how to bring the full gamut of things together so they can make them happen. So part of our ongoing capability development process in the projects is teaching them how to do that, making the linkages, I guess, work better, because in communities sometimes they don't, and being an honest broker for the community so we can tie these things together. So we've already learned, we're learning on the go in Ready Macleay. We've learned that while the first activation week was really great, we couldn't really wait until May to do the second activation week. So in the meantime, we've had additional cluster meetings with 2 with the CBD activation community and 2 with the creative industries. So it's interesting for us to see leaders emerge in each of those themes and really lead those meetings and bring extra people together. CBD activation has some really strong leaders who are suggesting things like, for example, the shops open every 3rd Saturday, so we can help to activate that. The other thing that I've been doing in Chad when he's in community is sitting in a local cafe and just meeting people. And I really didn't know what would happen when I agreed to do that. The owner of the cafe, and this is where we get really deep into community, and I think the real magic happens. So the owner of the cafe is a man called Luke Esby. He's run the cafe for 40 years. So he's seen ebbs and flows in that community for all of that time. And Lou's been a really good source of advice about what happens in the community. So he suggested that, or we agreed that I would just come and sit there every Wednesday in April. And every single Wednesday, different people have turned up, more every week. And sometimes they've met each other, they haven't known each other before. Sometimes they've been able to create opportunities. And just yesterday, we had pastors from 3 different denominations turn up with the local MP, some local business owners, even an 82-year-old man who's trading from Kempsey quite successfully online, his mechanic products, which is it's just fascinating. So these are the conversations that really enable us to move the project forward. It's interesting what you're learning from a data point of view as well, Chad, as we pull it apart.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's such amazing stories. Like just such a simple thing of just rocking up to a cafe, being there, and just having that open invite, and just the people that are coming in. And the other thing that really surprises us, and we were just talking about this, where um, you have a couple of people that have been in the community their whole life, maybe even similar kind of areas, whether it's retail or agriculture, and they haven't actually met each other, or they're not working together. And because of that facilitated conversation, next thing you know, they're starting to come together. We have another couple of meetings, and now we have, as you say, an initiative around every third Saturday opening up Main Street and having an entire event simply because of those initial meetings. And and measuring that from a data side of things can be a challenge, but also brings us an incredible opportunity, because we are taking not to get too techie and nerdy about it, we are taking a deep data approach to this, where we do want to find a way to observe and measure the impact, because we think that's essential if we're gonna improve place-based interventions across Australia as rapidly as possible. And we are working with some national providers to be able to do that better. But we do have a strong data model where we're taking the initiatives, we're mapping those to existing policies from government and from industry and from philanthropic organizations to see where it aligns, because we're not so bold as to think that when we come up with initiatives, we're the first ones to think about that. But we also acknowledge that some of the things, as you mentioned, Kerry, we can't necessarily address, right? These are really complex systemic challenges. So there's some things that we can activate. Many things ideally then can relate to the conference. But some of the ones are just like, yes, it's not only a challenge for us here in Kempsey, it's not only a challenge for rural communities in Australia, but some of these, some of the housing and infrastructure ones, or youth or transport, they're massive. But what we can do is we can raise those up for the collection of leaders that are going to come in September to say, so what do you reckon? And because it's supported by data, we can then take that, gift that effectively to other regions and say, can we collaboratively, collectively work together to have an impact on this? And that's really what's exciting, is long-term, deep systemic change with very specific, immediate, practical outcomes in a local community, again, of which you're seeing just firsthand in Kempsey. And the stories that are coming out of that cafe are just absolutely amazing, amazing opportunities.
They are. It's my favorite day of the week. I think it's not only that as well, with the issues that we're actually highlighting, again, because we have that honest broker role, we can de-identify that data that we're getting, and it's very useful to entities like the council. So council, in preparing their community engagement strategies or economic development strategies, whatever it is. So my feeling is that the next community we go into will be able to take a much broader approach in terms of what data they really need collected, because regional communities are absolutely over consulted as well, and they just go through the motions. So we're not consultants standing in a room that are, have just blown into the community. The community really gets to know us over time, so we can have those honest conversations that can then generate real data that can be used in all of these strategies, and for not-for-profits as well.
Yeah, and that's another one of our core principles that we often talk about. A couple of points there. One of them is that we only put parts of the program in place that are needed, because as you say, we connect with existing place-based infrastructure and work. And if there's somebody that already has an event, well, maybe we tack onto that and we support it with the strength of the social impact in the region's framework, but we don't necessarily have to do everything. Or by the same token, if they're already consulting in a similar way, we say, well, maybe if you tweak it a little bit, we can then use that data to inform the process of what we're doing to lead into the conference. So, you know, we step in where it's invited, where it's needed, where the community says, yes, you're welcome here. But the other one is that we're designed to disappear, as I like to say, in so much that we're not necessarily going in there saying, hey, we're here to help, you know, kind of the top-down approach. We're really, our success is that if people maybe even forget that we were there, and the local backbone gets all the credit for the amazing transformation that happens in the community, because that backbone's the one that's going to be there day after day, fielding the questions, doing the actual difficult work. So the more that we can help facilitate, support that, and accelerate, because we also acknowledge that one of the challenges that local backbones have is establishing those data models, or doing that broad engagement across the community development, economic development portfolios, because quite often those backbones have a very focused remit. And so whatever we can do to expand their impact and influence, accelerate the work that they do, as well as provide a robust integrated data model to support their work. You know, that's ideally the outcome that we're after. And thankfully we are seeing that in our first pilot here in Camp C, and very much looking forward to the next one. But so hopefully this conversation has given people a bit of an idea. And we're going to be doing these types of conversations where we share maybe some principles of social impact and rural and economic development that we're observing, you know, touching base on some national policies that are coming out in programs, and how people can get involved more, as well as give updates on ready communities, and the specific programs that we're running. But if people want to get engaged more, and they want to say, hey, look, how can I be involved? What's the next steps, Kerry?
So the first thing is to get your diary and write the 4th to the 6th of September when the conference will be on. And our website, which will be in the text as well, is socialimpactintheregions.com.au. Information about Ready Communities and Ready Macleay is there as well. That aside, yeah, I guess we'll be publishing these regularly too. So eventually we'd like to include audience participation as well, so we can continue to learn from the network. And that, just before we wrap up too, Chad, that capability development piece is as also working at the pace that the community requires. And we really want to connect with a regional alumni, either through the conference or people who are practitioners across regional Australia, to help us to develop this capability development. Preferably, you would have boots on the ground in the community or communities that we're working in. However, there will be some online opportunities too. So we'd really like people to connect with us on LinkedIn, email, however you can. We're pretty easy to find.
Great. Well, thanks heaps, Kerry. Love the yarn, and yeah, I look forward to keeping this up.
Likewise.